In today's video, I want to talk about some of the NHL injuries we've seen recently. We've seen some key players go out on IR, as well as some key players return from injury reserve. Plus, we have some updated NHL trade rumors, mainly focused on Chicago, St. Louis, and Ottawa. We'll discuss all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, we do have a few NHL trade rumors I want to discuss today, but first and foremost, I wanted to take a look at some of the more recent NHL injuries, as well as players returning from injury reserve. Again, we've seen another rash of injuries here to some pretty significant players that might be out for an extended period of time. Like, for example, with the big hit we saw just a few days ago between Ryan Reeves and Tom Wilson, it has been confirmed that Tom Wilson's been diagnosed with a concussion, which doesn't come as any surprise after we saw his helmet fly off during the hit and his head come down and go forehead first into the ice. Of course, as we know, with concussions, it's hard to predict the timelines, so it's kind of unpredictable at this point how long he'll be out of the lineup. But based on how he hit his head, I would say it's probably going to be a little while for sure. And I do hope that Wilson, as long as some other guys as well, because you see it a lot around the NHL, tighten up that chin strap, because it's so easy for that bucket to come flying off if you get hit hard enough. So it's certainly a dangerous thing for sure. And hopefully that can kind of send a message to other players around the league. They kind of tighten that up, and it's not something they should be taking so lightly. But he's not the only player to go down recently here with a concussion. Just the other day during the game between the Senators and Habs, we saw two Senators players leave the game with injury, and both could be out for a fairly significant amount of time. For example, Senators winger Bobby Ryan ended up kind of skating in and getting a shoulder to the face. It certainly was nothing intentional on the Montreal player's part, but he was coming up through the neutral zone and ended up making head contact with the Habs player's shoulder, and he went down, and he has also been diagnosed with a concussion as well. He doesn't really have a history of this like Wilson, and probably not quite as severe as Wilson, at least not from the look of it. But again, concussions are unpredictable. They can be difficult to put a timeline on. So he is right now considered out indefinitely until they can get a better idea of his progression and his return. Now, during that same game, not too long after, we saw Matt Duchene go out with an injury. It's kind of one of those things that didn't look bad at all. He came out of the penalty box, was trying to beat out an icing, and you could tell he tweaked something. It was either a groin, a hip, something, because he had a hard time getting off the ice, and even the referee had to kind of help him off because he had one side that was really obviously getting him quite a bit of trouble. And turns out it was a groin injury, and they're listing him as out for at least a week, but it could be weeks, multiple weeks, so anywhere from 1 to potentially 2 or 3. Again, it's another type of injury that can be a little bit hard to predict the exact timeline to return, because it just depends on how quickly it kind of heals up. But again, there's two significant injuries for the Senators to deal with here in the short term, so they are going to be going with an even younger lineup than they already have been. And obviously, the Senators probably more than just about any other team in the league have a ton of rookies and a ton of guys with not much experience, and of course now they're going to have to rely on them even more with a couple of their vets being down for potentially an extended period of time here. Coyotes goalie Antti Raanta as well is also on IR, and he is listed as week to week as well, so it'll probably be at least next week before he returns. But we'll see how long Raanta will be out. Hopefully it's not too long term, because he has played quite well for Arizona so far this year. But another guy who's kind of down and out here and been kind of battling the injury bug so far in this NHL season. Now, we also had some good news, though. It's not all bad news when it comes to NHL injuries. For example, the Bruins finally get back Charlie McAvoy. He's now back in the lineup. We saw the Jets get a couple guys back, including Dmitry Kulikov and Dustin Byfuglien. Of course, Byfuglien had a concussion as well. So, again, like some of the other guys we just discussed, you don't know how long they're going to be out. And in Byfuglien's case, it wasn't too long. I believe he was only out about a week or so. Wasn't anything too crazy. So thankfully for him and the Jets, he's back in the lineup, because he certainly plays a major role for them for sure. We also seen the Dallas Stars activate forward Marty Hanzal as well. Hanzal's another guy that's kind of battled the injury bug a lot in his career, but he is certainly active and back at her for the Dallas Stars. And the Blackhawks should also be getting back defenseman Connor Murphy. I don't think he's been activated yet, but if he hasn't been, it should be here very soon. He's not expected to be out much longer. He should be returning very soon, which kind of leads us to one of our NHL trade rumors I wanted to discuss today, which includes the Blackhawks and some of their defensemen. Once Murphy comes back, they will have 8 quality NHL defensemen on their roster, assuming they can keep them all healthy here at the same time. And there certainly is some speculation that the Chicago Blackhawks may be looking to move one of them, because, carrying that many defensemen, it is difficult to give them all, a decent amount of ice time to keep them all in a lineup, keep them playing. Now, speaking of which, though, I came across an article from NBC Sports suggesting that perhaps the Blackhawks should look to trade trade maybe Duncan Keith or Brent Seabrook. And of course, I think Duncan Keith would be the much easier between the two should they go down that road. Now, of course, as we know, the Blackhawks got off to a pretty decent start. They were getting a lot of good goals from the guys like Taves and Kane, but things have really tailed off here, and they've lost a lot of games and certainly worked their way down near the bottom of the standings. So really, there's a lot of speculation that Chicago, as the season goes on here, might have to come to terms with the fact that it's time to really break up that core and really kind of start to move a few players on to start looking towards the future. And now this article goes on to indicate that they feel like Taves and Kane are likely unlikely here. But I'm going to put the article up on the screen. We're going to go through a little bit of a snippet of it here, and I'll tell you what they're saying. So this article, again, is from James O'Brien of NBC Sports. He's certainly a writer that I've quoted on this channel multiple times before, so a pretty good, reliable source covering the Blackhawks here. It says, the Chicago Blackhawks should be preparing for the future, and it may be time to start moving some of their core. It's hard to see them trading Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, but they should look at their blue line and would need to either A, convince Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook to waive no-move clauses, B, finding trade partners for one or both of these defensemen. Now, Keith carries a $5.53 million cap hit, with a salary dropping to $1.5 in the final year. They should get a decent return for him now, but the longer they wait, the less it will likely be. Seabrook carries a salary cap hit of $6.875 million through 23-24, and teams won't be lining up. Seabrook's salary does start dropping next season, $7.5 million next year, and continues to drop from there. So between the two veteran Chicago Blackhawks blue liners, Duncan Keith would be much easier to move out of the two. For one, I think you can safely say that he's been the better quality, more productive player here in more recent years. He's got a better contract to work with, and it's not as long as Seabrook's either. So I think convincing one of the two to move would be a big help to move this blue line forward, to help move this team forward. I think the return on Duncan Keith would be significantly better, like I said, and way easier to move. That Seabrook contract is arguably one of the worst, if not the worst, in the NHL. At one point, obviously, Brent Seabrook was more productive, but even then, it's just really, really long and still has a lot of money left on it. So trading that contract will prove to be incredibly difficult, except they'd have to retain a lot to even have a chance. So, but with Duncan Keith now, I do think he's such a great skater and kept himself in pretty good health that he could be a reliable piece on another team that's really looking to boost their blue line to go over the top here towards a Stanley Cup. Keith and Seabrook, as well as some of the other veterans there, might see, like, you know what, the Hawks are kind of going in a new direction here. They need to really kind of tear things down and start fresh here. And so if they can move some of these guys out, give them a fresh start with other teams to kind of finish out their careers and have a chance to continue playing a little bit more successful hockey, might be good for their careers as well as the Blackhawks. And this is article references here, which I agree with, that they should be able to get a pretty decent return for a player like Duncan Keith. So if they can talk to him about his no-move clause, he might be willing to actually waive that to go on to have a chance to continue playing a little bit more meaningful hockey and have a better chance to win, potentially more championships here before his career is up. So something that the Hawks need to look at. And of course, they could go another route here as well. They do, like I said, have 8 defensemen. It's not just Keith and Seabrook, but many of the other guys aren't going to bring back the return that they would, for one. And secondly, a lot of the other guys are much younger and guys that they might be more interested in keeping in the fold as well. Plus, of course, they have Adam Boqvist, who they drafted in the 2018 NHL draft. Likely would make the Hawks, sometime over the next year, maybe 2 at the latest. And they certainly want to make sure that there's plenty of room to get him in the lineup and playing in his proper spot once he's ready for that in the short term here. So they got to keep that in mind as well. Adam Boqvist certainly projects to be a top quality offensive NHL defenseman. They got Yokoharu, who's played pretty well in his rookie season as well, and some other guys. So they really could move this team forward here by moving some of the veterans out. And I think Duncan Keith very well might be the easiest one of the bunch if he's willing to take a look at that no-move clause and consider changing teams. Now, regarding some of the other teams we want to discuss today and some updated NHL rumors, there was an article I came across regarding the St. Louis Blues as well. As we know, they're another team that's been struggling, so therefore a team that there's going to be lots of talk about, and a team that we've touched on here multiple times. But I do think General Manager Doug Armstrong, for right now, is trying to be patient because they're dealing with a ton of injuries. As much as he would like to make a move, I think it's more likely he is going to wait. I did see an interview with Bob McKenzie from TSN asking his thoughts on the matter with the Blues, asking him if he saw Doug Armstrong making a move in the short term, and he said it's possible, but he thinks it's unlikely given the fact of how many injuries they're dealing with, and he'd really like to see Craig Berube, the interim head coach here, have an opportunity to really work with a full healthy lineup before he does anything too significant, because more than likely when he does start to make some trades, he's going to have to be attacking that core. But I mean, if you take a look at their injury situation, they've got their captain Alex Pietrangelo now on long-term injury reserve. They have many other guys on regular injury reserve, like Robbie Fabry here yet again. Jaden Schwartz is on IR as well. Steen was on IR, but he's now returned. So obviously they have a fair share of injuries, which is certainly playing a role in their lack of success, but there's certainly more to it than just the injuries. Early on, before a lot of these guys got hurt, they weren't doing much better either. Now, I guess one positive, too, for the Blues is Jake Allen has certainly been playing better goaltending as of late. Got a shutout for them last night, so that's certainly going to be a big boost for his confidence here heading into the stretch here before the Christmas break as well. So they do have some things going relatively well, but they certainly have a lot of areas to work on as well. And I do think Doug Armstrong is going to be patient with this group until they can all get healthy and really see what they have here before they move forward. The only problem is if they don't get enough wins here in the short term, it might be too late to turn things around for the 18-19 season. Now, lastly here, I want to touch on an article regarding the Ottawa Senators and potentially moving their goaltender, Craig Anderson. Now, as we know, Anderson in the offseason here, leading up to the season, had requested a trade. That was made public, but the main reason for the trade was that he didn't really want anything to do with all the drama going around this team, especially with the Karlsson-Hoffman situation. That locker room was broken, as we've discussed before, and you've heard many members of the Senators organization touch on as well. And he said, I'm too old for this. I don't want any drama, so if you can't get that locker room fixed, I want out, is essentially how it went down from my understanding. And now that that's kind of, been all resolved and that's not an issue anymore, he seems quite happy and content to play there and to kind of write out this contract. But there was an article suggesting maybe they should look to trade him while his value was pretty decent, even though his numbers aren't the best. I mean, really, take a look at the number of shots the guy's facing every night. He really is playing relatively well and certainly much better than last year. And they feel like they could actually get decent value out of him. But the big problem with this Senators team is they don't have anybody else to play the games. I mean, Craig Anderson is on pace to play 73 games right now. Mike McKenna's played one start. Condon had 1 or 2 starts before he was put on waivers. We don't know the future of Mike Condon and what's really going on with that. I mean, he was put through waivers, cleared, been down in the minors, but he only played 1 game. He's apparently been battling some injuries or something, and I really don't know what's going on with Condon, but they obviously don't have the confidence in McKenna to play. Condon's down there. They have some younger goalies like Gustafsson, who looks to be the goalie of the future. Then you got Marcus Högberg as well, who's might come up to play depending on how things go here. But really, they don't have anybody they can rely on. And at this point in the season, even though they're a little bit lower in the standings, they're not out of the playoffs. They still have a potential to to try to get into a wild card spot. And not only that, this team needs to try to win as many games as they can this year. Their first round pick belongs to the Avalanche. And obviously, if they finish really low and have a shot at that number 1 overall pick, it's not even going to stay in their organization. So they need to win as many games as they can. So they need to make sure that, yes, they need to look at the future, but they also need to look at the now and make sure that that pick going to Colorado isn't too terribly high. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. But like I've said before, I don't think they really have any regrets about keeping the pick and drafting Brady Tkachuk. He's turned out to be a fantastic addition to that team. A great addition, great pick. But still, if they could have turned that into Jack Hughes, then you have to question maybe was it the right choice. But of course, you got to go with what you know. And of course, at the time, they said we can take the player that we really like and who has proven to be a solid player and acquisition for them. So they're not going to want to dip down too low in the standings. So personally, I don't see them moving Craig Anderson anytime soon. If Mike Condon can come back and play well for them to come to deadline, then maybe. But I don't think the Ottawa Senators need to look at trading Craig Anderson because they have absolutely no backup plan to get anybody else to play the games, and they would definitely end up being Team 31 for sure without Anderson being in the net. So personally, I don't think it's a wise move. But depending on how things are at the deadline, if they're not in too much danger of dropping down too far, and if they can get some solid backup goaltending from another source, then at that point, maybe. But I mean, Anderson's 37 years old. He's placing 40 shots a night. He's playing a ton of games. Could he go to another contending team to be a solid backup? Probably. But like I said, you got to have somebody who can take over, and that's just not there right now. So personally, I don't think it makes sense. One last quick note here before we go as well. Montreal Canadiens defenseman Xavier Ouellet, who was on waivers yesterday, did clear as well, and he has been assigned to their minor league affiliate in Laval. So that's all your news and updates here regarding NHL injuries, the waivers, as well as the latest trade rumors. So leave me your thoughts and comments down below. What do you think these teams should do? Like, should Ottawa take a look at trading Craig Anderson? Should the Blues remain patient here and get the guys healthy before they make some moves? Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation. So again, if you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up before you go, and I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.